I'm learning, that's what I'm learning the fast.
Do you wanna
Don't freak shit out.
I want to make sure we're celebrating America's 250 and Trinidad's 150 this year. There will be a work session of the City Council of the City of Trinidad, Colorado on Monday, March 23rd, 2026 at 3:00 p.m. in City Council Chambers at City Hall, 135 North Anima Street, Trinidad, Colorado, 81082. The meeting will now come to order. Kimberly is not here.
Yep, no roll call.
Roll call, no roll call. Here we go, everyone. As a reminder to all, this is a work session. We are here to receive updates and discuss policy directions. No formal votes or final actions are taken today. The following items are on file for consideration of City Council. Item 1, Trinidad Community Foundation exercise equipment update. I will turn the floor over to Lou and Candace and Lisa.
All right, thank you so much for having us today. We appreciate the time. We just wanted to, we're going to be passing these things out for you. We wanted to give you a quick update on the workout equipment on the Los Niños park facility. As you can see, you get a little bit more of an outline and where strategically the equipment's going to be placed, so you'll have a bigger, physical picture going on there. TCF, we just wanted to update you with the financials. Our offer, as always, is a total of $21,000, which breaks down to purchasing of the equipment, $11,174, the shipping of $28,26. We've agreed to contributing $5,000 toward the total foundation, and that includes the concrete pad and the rubber pad that is in her hand. Pass it around, kind of like show and tell.
Yeah.
That $5,000. We are also contributing $2,000 towards signage, which is just going to give like a small little memorial sign for Trinidad Community Foundation at the edge of the thing there. We decided today that there is a perfect place for it just off of the pad as you're coming off of the walking trail, and that's a total of $21,000. So we did get a couple of bids when we reviewed today, and we are going to be asking those, correct, Sharon?
Correct. So the concrete pad is being bid out along with the current bid that I reported last Tuesday for the Los Niños walking trail, phase 1. So if you look at the pickleball courts, you see that the pad for this on the site plan is just adjacent to the pickleball courts. We are estimating in this bid for the total work at Los Niños, the total concrete work, that the amount for this pad is approximately $12,000. I've just passed around the little rubber square, which is the manufacturer for the exercise equipment requires that we provide safety, a safety coating. So that is approximately $6,000. So with Trinidad Community Foundation graciously providing us $5,000 toward that foundation, I'm recommending that we take $15,000 out of the contingency line item of $250,000 in the capital improvement budget to cover the rest of this foundation, and so we're able to utilize the equipment donated by Community Foundation. We've not taken anything out of that contingency line item. We tried this is a new thing we did this year with the budget by adding a contingency line item rather than having to overrun an unbudgeted item. So we're going to put the $15,000 there. Does council have any questions for staff related to that, or Mr. Just is here and can discuss the concrete work, or we have our partners from Community Foundation here as well?
Just from a building perspective, is the concrete laid down and then it is a solid piece, or is it squares?
It's laid down in a solid piece, 6 inches. Bob, do you want to come up and cover how that will work? Thank you.
Good afternoon. You did hand one of these out, right?
They've got it.
So I heard you say square. It's actually a rectangle. It's 40 by 23.54. It's 6 inches thick, 3/4. Then the manufacturer required it, it's called a fall attenuation. So that's why it was a surprise to all of us, but that's where the rubber came in. It's 1 inch thick, they're rubber tiles. They're approximately 20 inches square,
So there's,
and they glue and dowel to each other. They don't glue to the concrete, but they glue and dowel to each other.
great.
So we do, in the bid tab, we have an alternative. Contractor may throw us a great price. If not, we're even considering using Public Works to install them because we feel it's fairly easy
Yeah.
to install.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've just bought one of those floors numerous times, so I wondered.
For your gym,
For the gym
Yeah.
at both hotels, plus outside, across from the Hilton, we have that little area, we have some outside too. Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to
So
ask?
it's 15,000 out of 250,000?
Correct.
Okay. And then I had a question, you may not be able to answer it, but is this the top, do you know, or is this the top?
it actually it comes with
Because
this.
this side
It comes with
falls
like 3
apart like
different
crazy.
colors. So the top will have a green.
Okay.
It's a green rubber.
It's gonna be this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure.
because it's gonna round this way
I thought so.
on the
but
edges, so that's how we'll do
This side
that.
falls apart. a little
Yeah,
bit.
I think the
Well,
bottom.
that's just because when she speaks
I've been
to people on
squeezing
the
it
phone,
for
she's
3 weeks in my meetings. I'm aiming that back, actually.
I was doing the same thing with it.
Carmella's laughing because I'm doing it for her meetings.
I don't know, she looks pretty stressed.
Great, let's give that back to Ms. Marshall.
So to answer your question, I think there's little offsets, like it sits up off of the
Oh, okay.
little pads, if you look at the bottom side.
Sure.
Yeah,
Space.
it had like,
Make some air cells.
Yeah,
Okay.
so air and water, and we're grading the concrete pad to the southeast corner, so we know water will perk through it, or get through it, so it can get out.
All right.
We're gonna provide openings in the curb. We have a curb on the east side and south side. Actually, the rubber will be flush with the pickleball courts and the adjacent walk path on the other
It's going
side.
to be a,
It's
it's
88
going to be an
compliant.
incredible amenity, so.
Yeah, yeah, it's not just,
It's really cool equipment if you guys haven't seen it.
yeah.
Interestingly enough, this morning on the Today Show, Kenneth filled it up and they demonstrated, they had some city that had just provided and all the senior citizens were out there.
Yeah, no, it's really great.
So if you look at today's replay.
We're
Today
hip.
Show. Yeah, we're out there with San Diego or something, wherever it was.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's not just, equipment that we're putting in a park, we're also building relationships, and it's for the community, and it's a lot of great things. So thank you so much for all your
Well,
hard
the
work.
Trinidad Community Foundation wants to just make it publicly known what a great experience it's been working with the city. Thank you guys so much. Everybody has been so easy to work with. We could have brought this to anyone at any time and probably gotten some strange resistance or had to figure out how to cover it.
Yeah, or kept it.
And the city's just been really great to work with, so we want to make sure you guys, thank you so much for
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, thank you.
Do you have any other questions for us?
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Mhm.
Is there a fence around it? Is there security around it, or is this open?
It's open.
Okay.
And it's
Is there
adjacent
gonna
to
be
the
light, is there
playground.
gonna be lighting anywhere?
The pickleball lighting is right adjacent to it.
Okay.
In fact, this is one of the lights that's on the court, and the other one's on the opposite side. Directly lighting on the playground equipment itself, no, but you're going to get residual lighting. But when we continue on with the project, we want to go with solar, and those are going to go around the walking trail. So and this is part of this path here heads over to the ADA bathrooms, the pit baths. So we were planning on this phase 2 of doing solar lighting, approximately 150 feet apart. So that whole trail, this park is going to it's going to get very popular because it's pretty down there. It's going to have a continuous walking trail around it. It's not as big as Central Park walking trail, but it's a pretty park. It's got a lot going on in its location. So that's why we want to continue on with the solar lighting.
It ties into the larger river project as well.
Great. Is there gonna be ADA compliance from the start, or is that a change order?
No. That's why we specifically needed to know the thickness, because there were several options on this rubber. It's going to be flush with the adjacent walking path, so you can roll directly from the concrete path right into it. And then all the equipment's placed ADA per the manufacturer apart.
Do you see any potential change orders? You've studied it, you've designed it.
I don't see any at the time, but like I said the other night, you never know what you're going to uncover. But at this point, this first part is phase 1, and it bids next, is it Wednesday, Terry?
It is, it closes on Wednesday, the 1st.
It's fairly straightforward. It's basically a concrete project. It's got the ADA path, the ADA parking, this structure, a pad, lack of better words, in it. So it's pretty straightforward. It's all above ground. So it's not like we're excavating down and finding the unknown. So
Should a change order occur, you'll be the second to know.
Thank you.
We just really appreciate TCF for doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
guys.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Lou.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
So Mayor, the next step will be on this meeting on April 7th. We will have the MOU between the city and Community Foundation for the $5,000, followed by the bid tab presented by the engineering department to accept the bid. So both of those will happen in tandem on the 7th.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
Thank you.
Item number 2, Wildland Urban Interface Presentation and Discussion.
Mayor, council members. I want to kind of do this in segments. I have Chief Burnett here and Mr. McDonald from Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. I kind of want them to come up and kind of tell you how we got here, that we kind of need to adopt a code, and then I'll kind of take it over after that. And then you can ask these guys any questions you want, because they're from the state. Okay?
Thank you so much.
All right, so Chief Burnett, Mr. McDonald, will you both come, or?
I'll let Chief go first.
Yeah, I'll take it. So, Mayor, council members, thank you for having us here today. My name is Chris Burnett, as Chief Becker said. I'm the Chief of Fire Prevention, or Fire and Life Safety with the Division of Fire Prevention and Control. So we're responsible for the statewide implementation of codes and standards. And I think I should probably also share with you that I'm the department's ex officio member on this code board that I'm going to present to you. So Chief Backrack asked me to come and give you a little background on what the code is and how we got here today. So that's what I'm going to do. We do have a little bit of a presentation so you can follow along if you'd like. But this all starts out back in 2022 when just after, or I guess it was just before the Marshall Fire, the governor had written a letter to the Colorado Fire Commission to start taking a look at a statewide effort to address wildland fire in Colorado. At that point, we had many large wildland fires, and he wanted a more holistic approach that the Fire Commission came up with. And so at that time, the commission created a subcommittee to start looking at wildfire in Colorado and looking at how it can be addressed at a statewide level. That committee met for many, many months, and it was made up of, at one point, there were about 75 people in that committee looking at different options. What they finally came up with was a recommendation to the Fire Commission to create a statewide wildfire resiliency code board, and that board would develop a code for Colorado that would then go to the local jurisdictions for adoption. That recommendation was passed by supermajority with the Fire Commission, which eventually became a recommendation to the legislature. And in 2023, Senators Exum and Cutter picked up that recommendation and ran Senate Bill 166. Of course, I went through the whole process, and throughout the process in both the Senate and the House, it went through several modifications and iterations. What resulted was a bill that would establish a 24-person code board, 21 voting members, and 3 ex officio members. And that board would be tasked with what you see up here, creating a wildfire resiliency code for Colorado. And in that bill, it required that all local governing bodies with wildland urban interface in their jurisdictions would have to adopt that code by a certain date and then start enforcing it by another date. So those dates are up here. That bill did end up passing. The board was established and the board's got going in October of 2023. And since then, the board's been working on this code for Colorado. On July 1st of 2025, the board adopted this code for Colorado, and that kind of kicked off the timeline for local jurisdictions. Local jurisdictions then had 9 months to adopt this code, and then 3 months after their adoption to start enforcing it. So the last date that a local governing body has to adopt this is April 1st, 2026. And then within 3 months of that adoption, the local governing body has to start enforcing it. The last part of it was the bill required that us, the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, we have resources available to help with enforcement should the local jurisdictions not have that ability. It took a while, but finally this session we got approval to start hiring some folks to help with that enforcement. And we've got some positions posted now. They've given us the authority or the positions and the funding to hire 5 individuals to help local governing bodies enforce this code. It's not nearly enough. The request was for 20 people, but with the state of the state budget, they whittled it down to 5 people. So it'll limit our ability to provide the full breadth of services. We'll probably just be able to do desk reviews rather than what we anticipated doing, which was plan reviews and inspection services. But hopefully, as the budget improves, we can go back and get more resources. So I'm going to pause there and see if you have any questions on the Senate bill that launched this, and then I can go into more detail on the code itself.
I was just wondering, the 5 governing people, so they have to approve everyone's? How do these 5 people work? There's 21 people on the board, and then they've hired 5 people. How does that work, the difference?
Yeah. So what we're anticipating is there will be those local jurisdictions who don't have the capability to enforce it on their own, and so they will have their construction services contact us for that assistance, and then we'll get in the plans for commercial or residential structures that are being built under this code, and we'll do a desk review of what they're planning to construct and let them know, yes, it meets what's in the code, or no, you'll have to make these modifications. But it's going to be a pretty monumental task for this group of 5 people.
Well,
there's no doubt.
Will this be easier for a local builder? How much will it change local building?
If I can hold off on answering that, I'll show you what the content of the code, and you'll see there are certain elements that will have some higher levels of requirements. So there is some additional requirements for builders, but I think you'll see it's not terribly onerous.
Does anyone else want to ask any questions at this time when he did a pause?
Maybe if we wait for
Yeah, okay.
The content of the code.
Chief, I did have one question.
Yes.
When you did outreach across Colorado, did you see a variance of opinions from urban areas to rural areas? And do you feel like when the code was written, some consideration was taken into the difficulty in rural areas to implement something
I do.
like this?
That's a really good question. So over the course of those 18 months while this code was being developed, part of the bill required us to meet in different locations. So the board did meet throughout the state, and each of those meetings had opportunity for public comment. But because of the composition of the board, I felt like everybody was pretty well represented. So that was nice. One nice thing about this bill is that these 21 appointed members had to come from different areas of the state, from different backgrounds. I don't have the slide in this presentation, but they also were appointed by different members of the House and Senate. So the majority leaders had appointments, the minority leaders had appointments. My boss's boss, the executive director of the Department of Public Safety, had several appointments. And all those appointments had to come from certain areas, some engineers, some fire departments, some building departments, insurance, utilities, and so it was a wide breadth of services that were being represented on this board. And part of the commission of the board had to look at the financial ramifications of this code,
Okay.
as well as what impacts, try to look at what impacts it would have on insurance and insurability. So I do feel like they did a good job of trying to represent the rural area as well as the urban. And if you take a look at the composition of the board, there's very few from the Denver metro area. So I know that there's always concern that this is a Denver board putting requirements on other areas of the state, but many areas of the state are represented now, and now Trinidad is represented because Chief Baccarat is on our board now. So, and we're so happy that he is. So,
Just a question, so would you say, I was looking at the code, a lot to look at.
it is.
That the insurance industry was a driving factor in some of the adoptions to the code?
You know, I think that they were part of the discussion, and so we tried to do things in this code that would drive insurance affordability and accessibility. But I'll be honest with you, getting the insurance industry to say what elements will make a difference on your insurance bill is hard. So they have the what's it called? Institute for Home and Business.
Institute for Business and Home Things, IGHS
Yeah.
services.
Institute for Home and Business. What is it? Safety and
Safety.
Yeah. And so that is who the insurance industry looks to for safety standards. And so we did look at IDHS's different standards and tried to apply that to our code. And so our hope is that pulling in some of their requirements was going to make that impact on that. So,
Yeah, not so much for cost, but even accessibility
yeah,
to be insured.
absolutely.
Okay.
Mayor, could I please just interject? I just want to let all of you know that Senate Bill 23-166 became 24-33.5-1236 in Colorado Revised Statutes. And just so you know, this has happened a lot while I've been the city attorney, and that is the legislature adopts something like this, and then they have regulations. They have a regulatory framework. That's a lot of what you guys were doing for a long time, these regulations regarding all this, the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, which you all have. And then that kind of percolates down into what local governments and municipalities have to do. And anyway, I don't know if that helps you to look at it that way, but that's kind of how this all happened, I think.
That's precisely it.
Okay, good, thank you.
And now it's in the lawyer's hands.
Yeah, I think.
Is there a reason why they changed the numbers that commonly happen?
Well, these things, it probably was started as a Senate bill, might have begun as a House bill, but in the Senate, that's how it was known as Senate Bill 23-166. And then when it goes through both houses of the legislature and the governor signs it, it of course becomes statute. So I think that is the common, how you refer to all of this is Senate Bill 23-166. Because that's evidently what gave life to this, rather than that sexy statute number I just gave.
Exactly. Yeah. If I can elaborate, I think the Senate bill is the package of statutes that were being proposed, and so the Senate bill established 24-33.5, 1236, and 1237. Both were represented in the bill, and then eventually became statute.
Correct.
After the passage of the bill. So.
And then you promulgated the rules.
Right, and then the rules are the CCR 8 CCR 15-1539.
And it's like the liquor code. The liquor code has the Department of Revenue regulations. The marijuana code has the code of regulations. The Natural Medicine Act has those things anyway. So that's why I said just it happens a lot that these things are adopted and kind of filtered in.
Thank you for answering our questions. We can probably go past the first slide now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you don't want to be here all night. I just wanted to show you this. If you're interested in getting electronic versions of the code or the map that you're seeing here, or the regulations, if you hit that QR code, it'll take you to the website where you can do that. So that's all, of course, free to download. And yeah, there's that regulation, 8 CCR 150739. And so the regulations were just developed. The regulations are kind of our way at the state level to take statute and communicate it into a more usable fashion and elaborate on it. And so those regulations is what adopted this code for Colorado, as well as the map that we're going to talk about. So, everybody done with that? Okay. Okay, so I just want to share with you what it does do and what it doesn't do. So what it did do is it establishes this minimum code for new construction. And it's not intended to apply to existing structures except for in certain instances. So this is where something new is being built. And I want to be clear, it applies to both residential and commercial structures. There are some exceptions to that. Mainly when you get into agricultural areas. So those barn type structures, as long as they're far enough away from the main structures, this doesn't apply to them. But most other commercial and residential structures being built as new, this would apply to those. You know, I have a hard time, when I start talking about the wildland-urban interface, I get focused on residential structures, but this does apply to both. Now you'll see with the requirements, just by virtue of commercial structure construction, they'll probably meet a lot of these requirements anyhow, but these requirements are meant to apply to both. Now for existing structures, if they are in the wildland-urban interface, so if they're in one of these colors on the map, there are a couple of instances where some of the requirements of this code would kick in. So if they are doing an addition of 500 square feet or more on a structure, then that addition would have to meet the requirements of this code. The other place where it would apply to an existing structure is if they're making modifications to the exterior of the structure in over 25% of that element, then the entire element would have to meet that. So just as an example, if somebody's replacing more than 25% of their roof and the roof covering that they currently have doesn't meet the requirements of this, then they'd have to replace the entire roof to meet this. But that it would only be that element. They wouldn't have to bring the whole structure up. Right? Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question. You said the 500-foot addition, that only the addition would need to be compliant with that.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So, and it does specify it's 500 square feet of increased or more of increased footprint. And so to me, that's horizontal construction, not vertical construction. But that's something that the code officials will have to work through and interpret.
So 500 feet on this addition, I put a metal roof on that, and then the rest of it wood shingle. What do we do?
Under the limitations of this, it could stand just that way. Now, I think what you will see, at least what I'm being told by a lot of building code officials who deal with a lot of additions, is that in most instances, people will want things to match, and so eventually they're going to replace the roof on the rest of it to match the roof they just put on. So it might organically come to meet, but the way this is written, only the addition has to meet the requirements. So. Any other questions? Okay, let's go through the long list of what it doesn't apply to. So, interior alterations. So you can still do tenant finishes, you can do your kitchen upgrades, bath upgrades, what have you. Anything on the interior of the structure isn't going to kick in the requirements of this code. Exterior modifications such as painting, staining, that type of thing, that's not going to kick in the requirements. It's just when you start replacing elements that you kick in these requirements for existing structures. So for little detached accessory structures like maybe a small garage or a shed, if they're under 120 square feet and they are located more than 10 feet away from the nearest occupiable structure, those little structures, it won't apply to those. When you get over 120 square feet, then it will apply to those in certain instances. But what we're trying to drive there is that you can still put your shed, a small shed, as long as you keep it 10 feet away from the house. So, group U, so this is what I was talking about, like your barns, your pole barns, those structures that are intended for use for agricultural purposes mainly, if they are located more than 50 feet away from the structure, regardless of the size, this won't apply to those. What we're really looking at here is what we have defined as occupiable or habitable structures. So those structures meant to live, work, or play in. And you know, your barns, even though there's a lot of work that's going on in there, it's not intended to meet these requirements. So, and sticking with that agricultural theme, this is one that might affect your jurisdiction quite a bit, and that is 35 acre parcels, 35 acre parcels or greater that only have one residential structure on them and do not abut a residential or commercial area. This code doesn't apply to those. And so I am by no means an expert on zoning and planning, but my understanding is this goes back to a statute back in 1970 that exempted parcels 35 acres or greater from the subdivision requirements of the smaller parcels, kind of protecting the agricultural industry and the desire to continue to use property for those purposes. So that's my speculation. I actually wasn't part of the conversation where this got inserted into the bill and then eventually the statute. So, but just know if it's a 35 acre parcel or bigger, and it's got only one residential structure, and so that's a qualifier there. What I'm seeing so I should probably share with you, not only do I work for the state, but I volunteer for my local volunteer fire department, and I'm the fire marshal for them. We're a pretty rural area, and we've got a lot of these types of properties. What I'm seeing happening on these properties is now they're adding an accessory dwelling unit, like a mother-in-law house or grandmother quarters or whatever you want to call it. As soon as they add that second residential structure, now that property falls into the requirements of this, because the exemption is just one residential structure on that property. So
Interesting how those two state requirements meet in the middle there.
yeah.
We are exempted from the ADO rules, so.
You personally?
No, the city.
Oh, okay.
The manufactured homes are exempt?
If they are built under the HUD requirements. So the thing here is we can't apply state requirements to a federally covered structure. And so if they are building something to the HUD manufactured home requirements, then you can't apply this to that. But it would apply to any attachment to that. So say you get a HUD home and you decide to build a carport onto it, then this would be required on the carport.
Or the front porch.
Or if you build a deck onto a HUD home, the deck requirements from this code would apply to it, so.
Doesn't make sense. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It just doesn't make sense, because, you know, you bring the prefabs or the mobiles in there, they're built the cheapest. They're gonna get torched fast, they're the first ones to go.
I don't disagree.
And it's not fair when we're building customs here, and then they get to do that, so. Don't get me started, sorry.
I don't disagree with you, and to me, we could probably have another conversation on that side. But these are what's exempt under the statute. And so, any questions on that?
Comment. I'm surprised on the 38 or 35 acre parcels around here. That's where the biggest fire danger is around here when we're out in the county. 'Cause that's what I do. I build big customs out in the woods, in the top of the mountains. And we do this as common sense. We've been doing it for 20 years, so they don't burn down.
The 35 acres you can exclude, but as a county, the county commissioners can say, we're gonna include the 35 acre parcels in this code. But that's on the county commissioner side, not your side.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because we don't have any ag parcels in the actual city. What's your zoned? Because I think you're one of the biggest landowners. You're what, 58?
Yeah, but I'm right in the middle of town.
Yeah.
But I mean, all the houses I built, Santa Fe Trail Ranch up there.
And they're considered ag because they allow lease on livestock on that Santa Fe Trail Ranches to keep it as a ranch, right there? 'Cause you live
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the scariest place there is if there's a fire.
There
I
it is.
know.
If that happens, it's like a word.
But that would be on the county side to not exclude the 35 acre, include those in the code, but that's not for your, under the
It's not our
city.
lane right now.
Yeah, right?
But your comment was the same as Chief's. You said,
Yeah.
you know, that's one of our biggest
Yeah.
fire considerations, and they're exempt.
At mobile homes, huh?
Well, and the mobile homes are only if they're built to HUD, right? Not all of them are built.
Correct. Just
Uh-huh.
just the ones built to the HUD standard.
Right.
So, quick question. So in that the area of just the gray, that's they don't have to.
This is all in our city. Right, and can you talk about this map, what we're looking at?
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, actually, I'm just
You almost there?
getting there. So there are, when you get into this code, there are two levels of requirements. Class 1 requirements are gonna apply to anything in yellow, and Class 2 requirements apply to anything in red or orange. What we're mapping here is the anticipated the fire severity. So if you were to have a fire, we're looking at what we would consider the fire intensity to be. And so the yellow areas would probably be those smaller fires that are below 2 feet in flame length and kind of crawl along the ground. When you get to the orange, now we're seeing fuels and topography that would feed a fire that would get up to probably 8-foot high flames. And when you get to the red, that's where we're anticipating the really big fires, sometimes in excess of 30-foot flame lengths. And so this is really just looking at the fire severity potential of the topography and the vegetation. One thing to point out is you can see within the city, there's no color. That doesn't mean that you don't have fuels that won't burn in the city. It's just that we are mapping vegetative fuels. And so there isn't enough vegetative fuels in the city center to establish one of those colors. This modeling will not model what a fire will do in the built environment. But really we're looking at vegetative fuels. And so you, as decision makers, could decide, well, we think it's wise to harden structures around the outside, and you could increase, where these requirements apply. But if you just go with the map as is, this code will only apply to those areas with a color. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I think what my question was, because like, so where it's gray, we don't have to, the code's not gonna be enforced or pushed.
Are you talking out here?
No, gray, the city gray, where.
The city, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, unless you decide to,
yeah.
And I
unless you
really want you
decide
to consider these colors. Everything we look at is the fuel packages, whether it's structure or wildland, right? So all of these colors are just fuel packages. When we get into the red, that's just high fuel packages. Plus that you throw in the terrain, okay, that's gonna increase that intensity of that fire to deal with. Does that make more sense?
I'm sorry, you just kind of lost me. So, in the city, where it looks white to me right now, this code does not apply?
It does, because this is only 7th Street here, this is Nevada, this is San Juan. So a lot of our city is covered up because of our fuel packages.
Okay.
Your property, covered up. This is all up in here in Allendale.
Okay.
So you're not seeing it through the color. Okay?
Okay.
but it would not apply to those areas that are gray or white.
Yeah, so like Smith, Willow, the college, First Street, this is Main Street here. This is Central Park.
Chief Backrack, what do you mean when you say covered up?
Well, because it's covered with this fire intensity overlay.
Okay.
So if we were able to, and I can't because this is built by the state, I can't remove that overlay
And
for you
see-
to actually see where it's
What
at.
we might be able to do,
I can unfreeze this if you want.
we might be able to, how do we get to layers here? Is this layers? No.
That's not the, this is just a viewer. I don't, can you change it?
Oh,
Or is it over here? There you go. So
Oh.
if we take off the fire intensity scale, okay, so that's the map of our city. There's Morris Canyon, Garfield, right? This is all of our city here. You guys see that? Okay, and then if I put this fire intensity scale back on, that's how much we're covering up.
Well, I think what we're trying to figure out is right there, let's say like East Goddard Avenue right there, where it's clear. It's like, remember, just.
You're talking right in here?
So would they have to have the metal roof, the fire, the composite decking, the,
Not in this area.
that's what I
because
think, that's what I was asking.
Because right now, we don't know how structures burn type of thing. They can't scale that on this map,
Okay.
right? We're just looking at vegetation as a fuel package, not the actual building.
Actual building check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't gotta go.
Yes.
PD's requesting that you stage at Garfield and Espinosa, your 45-year-old male, possibly to
so yeah, so the two classes areas.
It doesn't apply to everything, it's just certain different areas. Wherever the fuel is, then it's.
Right.
Yellow is level 1, orange and
Yeah.
red are level 2 and 3. Correct.
Correct.
And Chief Burnett, how often will the state be updating this map as you study this?
Every 3 years. So
Okay.
the statute requires us to review the code and the map every 3 years.
So if we were to implement, starting this summer, a pretty robust mitigation program, concentrating on the most red or orange areas, it could be in 3 years that even if we adopt this code, we could work toward turning the city more yellow.
You absolutely could.
And
yeah.
so even though the code was adopted, perhaps we wouldn't have so many red areas or orange areas. We'd be back to yellow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
At a previous meeting, they were talking about grants as well.
I'm gonna talk about that.
We're gonna talk,
I'll
okay,
talk about
all
that.
right, just skip that.
On the code, the other question that I had is historic structures. It looks like because we have a National Historic District in the downtown, and we even have a list of most all of the buildings are contributing.
Yeah.
Those are buildings that are well in excess of 50 years old,
Yeah.
mostly wood structures. It does say that if this code is adopted, that we could issue variances if the building materials or the rehabilitation materials used were needed to keep the building in a historic
Yeah.
capacity.
So an area that the council has designated as historic, so it doesn't even have to be on the national or state register, it
Right.
could be one that the council has designated, then you try to meet the code the best you can in those areas,
Right.
but still trying to maintain the historic feel and look. Yeah.
Because we have national designated, we have state designated, we've also landmarked local buildings as well.
So it sounds like you've got all three covered. So.
Those were my questions. Thank you, Mayor. On code.
So let me go into the map just a little bit further. So because the code requires a map to apply to, the governing body, you would have to adopt either the state map, or if you disagree with this map and want to do your own, you could do your own map. You'd have to use the same elements, so types of vegetation, slope, and critical fire weather information. And if you wanted to change the map, you could petition the board to allow you to change it to what you want it to be based on those elements. So you'd have to show the board how your modifications are the appropriate modifications based on those elements. But there is an opportunity to do local mapping if you chose to. The other opportunity that there is as far as the map goes and how you apply the code is in section 3.4 of the code. It does allow the code official to do what's called ground truthing, where if somebody, and that's meant to be done at the parcel level by the code official, or somebody who's presenting it to the code official and the code official is signing off on it, where if somebody buys a parcel and they go out and they say, I'm just not seeing the conditions on this parcel that drive it to be red, for instance. They could hire somebody to come out, look at the slope, look at the vegetation, look at the critical fire weather for the past however many years, and petition the code official to reduce that. And as long as they, gave a scientific justification to do that, the code official could approve that. And that would be free of board input, because that's the code official actually, signing off that, the vegetation on the ground and the slopes we're seeing doesn't contribute to that fire intensity.
And that would be our local official, is that correct?
Yeah, so once you adopt this code, you'll see in chapter 1 of the code, it establishes the adopting authority as the code official. Then the code official gets a lot of those powers that you typically get with the adoption of a code, where you have the ability to accept alternate means and methods, approve materials, do approve ground truthing. So it does empower the local jurisdictions to enforce it the way they need to. And that was something that was very clear in the bill, and then it became statute, was that the enforcement should be left to the local governing body's enforcement regulations. The board shouldn't be telling you how to enforce it. It's just the statute set the obligation for you to adopt it, but then use your enforcement mechanisms to make sure it gets put in place.
Sorry, one more question about the map.
That's great.
So talking about managing a department, that map is built based on vegetation as it was studied from a variety of different factors.
Yeah.
So we blow it up to a parcel level, and we determine that my home sitting in the middle of town is in an orange area, but it's bordered by Les's, which is in a yellow area.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring my building permit in to build my custom home.
Yeah.
That's not broken out by parcel. So I'm gonna argue that my parcel is actually yellow because that's not broken out by any grid or factor, is it?
No,
Where we
you can go down
bear
to
it
the
down
parcel
to the parcel level?
Yeah. You can type in an address and it'll take you down to it and it'll show you.
So we could actually show me where my home, my lot,
Yeah,
was basically in an orange area.
yes,
Okay.
yes. But it brings up a good point that if you were if your lot is orange and everything surrounding you is yellow,
Yeah.
and you're gonna go in and develop that, and you're gonna scrape it and remove all the vegetation and flatten it out so you can build your home, that might be a good opportunity for ground truthing. Where under the site development plan, you say, we're removing all vegetation, the fuel packages are going away. We would like to change from moderate hazard to no hazard.
So a developer could come in on a 40 home subdivision.
Yep.
And argue that exactly they were gonna do that. They're gonna
And-
scrape everything,
Yep.
put in streets, put in utilities.
And then the code official could approve that as reducing the hazard severity. But then, it would be on the code official and the developer to make sure that they follow through with the implementation of the approved site development plan.
Right.
If at any point they change and say, well, we decided that we're gonna keep a small forest in the middle of the subdivision, then it's back to the drawing table and you have to renegotiate that ground truth thing. Really good question.
Sure. Thanks.
I just have a nerdy question. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, so when you go in and you clear this, you were talking about elevation and things like that. How does that square with flood if you take all the vegetation out? And now you've got these slopes and this flood kind of point. How does that work?
There's a different regulatory committee.
That'll be next week.
Because I live at the bottom of the big.
Yeah, outside of my area of expertise,
Okay.
but I think that site development folks probably get that and would.
I was thinking of the
Yeah,
city
for-
because they own the stuff. Anyway, okay, I got you. All right, thank you.
I was just wondering, because the county was around us, if we could just see the county map, if we could shrink it up just to see what that looks like.
That's really red.
It's Christmassy.
And it takes a while for it to load.
Wow.
Let's go a little bit smaller.
That's
Los Angeles County.
So this is the county here. Pretty much everything to the west is red, everything.
To the east is yellow.
Yeah.
That's as expected.
As expected, yeah, absolutely.
Well, there is some prairie land, so I just.
So if somebody cleared their land, they could build a house under, without restriction on material type then?
Yeah, and I guess there's a caveat to that. It's the parcel plus 300 feet around the parcel. So, you couldn't, I think you would struggle to take something that's in red and surrounded by red and take it down to nothing. I think you could argue that, hey, I'll clear my parcel and level it out, and that'll reduce the hazard, but once you take into account the 300 feet around it, it'll probably still kick you up to at least some requirements, if not the higher levels, so.
So it really has to be done at a development level if you want to clear an entire
Yeah.
block or
Yeah.
area.
And I think there are some instances, like if somebody built in the yellow here, they could probably, maybe reduce the risk enough on their own parcel to get it down to. But at that point, I'll show you the requirements for yellow, and they really aren't a lot. I mean, I think they're requirements that just we as homeowners probably would want to do anyhow. So I'll just jump into that. So the class 1 requirements, the way we were looking at this is the class 1 requirements are really meant to protect against embers. So the class 1 requirements are in those areas where we aren't expecting big fires, but we are expecting maybe substantial embers. And embers, we found, can start a house on fire just as easily as being in direct contact with flames. And so the class 1 requirements are protecting against the embers flying in and landing somewhere where it could light. There are 3 areas on your home or building where they like to do that. one is on the roof, one is in the gutters, and one is through your vents. And so this is really, this class 1 structure hardening requirements are limiting you to a class A roof. And a lot of the roofs we use in Colorado, because of the hail we experience, are already class 1, or I'm sorry, class A. And so we're limiting the roofs in these areas to class A coverings or assemblies. Gutters and downspouts are limited to non-combustible gutters and downspouts. And the vents, there are 2 different ways to meet the vent requirements, but they both end up in about the same place, where it's they're ignition resistant vents, and the openings, there's mesh covering the openings, and the mesh has no bigger than an 1/8 inch opening. We found that that'll keep the larger embers out that really tend to start a structure on fire. So that's really what the requirements are for class 1. And a lot of our current construction meets these requirements. I think the biggest thing will be the vents, but that's all we're asking for the things that are being built in the yellow. But with that, we had to approach this 2 different ways. We wanted to approach it with hardening the structure, but then protecting the area around the structure. And so also in class 1 are site and area requirements. And with that, what we're asking is the first 5 feet around the house be non-combustible. So here is, you have an ember come in, it bounces off and it falls down, right beside the structure. If there is something beside the structure that can catch fire, then that will eventually catch the structure on fire. So we're asking to keep that first 5 feet non-combustible. So put rocks, try not to plant anything in those areas. There is an allowance for ignition-resistant vegetation. The State Forest Service has a nice encyclopedia of those types of plantings, but really we're trying to keep this 5 feet out from the structure, just that that zone where we don't put anything combustible. So sidewalks, flagstone pathways, rock beds, we definitely do not want combustible mulch in there. But that we're finding is probably one of the highest levels of defense you can do with your home or building, is to keep that first 5 feet non-combustible.
So I should go take my straw wreath off the front door.
It's a good place for an ember to land, and
Right.
straw likes to burn. So.
It does.
So that, as far as the site around the building, we're only talking about the first 5 feet in the yellow areas. But along with that, there's some additional requirements you can see up there. Once you get into this code and you start building under this code, we want to make sure that our first responders can find their way there. And so I doubt you have an issue with it in the city here, but we do run into, especially like in my jurisdiction out in the rural areas, I've got a lot of buildings without address markers. And so we need to start putting address markers on. And we even have some areas where the roads aren't even marked. And so we want to make sure the roads are marked, addresses are marked. And then if there are fire protection equipment, mark that fire protection equipment. And then the last 2 elements that we address in segment area design is retaining walls and fences. So those are 2 things that we've seen start structures on fire, where the retaining wall or the fence near the structure will catch fire and then start the structure on fire. So if a retaining wall or a fence are within 8 feet of the structure, then they're limited to what materials they can use. Should be non-combustible or ignition-resistant materials. And in the case of fences, there is an exemption or an exception for vinyl fencing. You can use vinyl in this 8 feet because vinyl typically melts and runs away instead of staying in place, catching fire and catching the structure on fire. And so enough of the board members thought that was a less of a hazard and allowed it as an exception. Now, there are several jurisdictions who, when adopting this, they've removed that exception. So the other place is if a retaining wall is part of the support structure for the means of egress from the building, then that retaining wall also has to meet this. So I got in my little rural jurisdiction, I've got a lot of long private driveways that go over hill and dale, and they've built them up, and so that roadway, that private roadway, is being held up by retaining wall. And we don't want that retaining wall burning and falling down, and then you not being able to get in or out to the structure. And so if it's supporting the means of egress from the structure, then those also have to be non-combustible or ignition resistant materials. So, any questions on class 1 requirements? And I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time. I need to move quicker, just let me know. Okay.
The custom homes that are built, that council members are aware of, would they do okay under these class 1 requirements?
Oh, yes.
I was asking the council, but specifically.
I don't build
you
any
council
custom
members.
Uh,
Custom homes that are
Please,
built.
ask the question again.
For the custom homes that are being built in Trinidad right now, would they do well under these class 1 restrictions? Would they be able to be
I think a
built
lot of them would.
under these class 1 restrictions?
Yeah, I think a lot of them would be okay.
Roof style.
I'm not saying
and
everyone, I'm
everything.
not saying everybody,
Right,
but I know the style that we build, but we're high end. So
right.
we've been thinking about this for 20 years.
So you could build within these?
I've got no problem with this
Okay.
code.
And I think where you're gonna be building in will be in class 2 and class 3.
Okay, well, we'll go there next.
Yeah, and just know I'm doing a very high-level overview of this. For somebody who's gonna build under these, of course, you'd wanna look at the code.
Sure.
There are some other roof requirements that I didn't go over, like, you know, where there's a gap between the roof covering and the underlayment, then you just need to make sure that gap is filled somehow. And there's some requirements for valley flashing if you have open valleys, so.
Question.
Yeah.
Trex decking. Trex synthetic style decking.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Let's get into that. So you don't have any decking requirements under class 1, but when you get into class 2, this is where we have that higher level of fire severity. We are anticipating radiant heat and maybe even direct flame impingement. And so with that, we increase the requirements. So all the class 1 requirements still apply to these areas. So now we're in the orange and red areas. But now we need to not only worry about embers, but we're worried about direct flame impingement or radiant heat. And so we've increased the requirements for eaves, exterior walls, underfloor enclosures, decking, appendages and projections, windows and doors, and detached accessory structures. So there's a whole lot more in this because there's a bigger hazard in these areas. So to answer your question about decks, the only requirements in this code for decks are the deck walking surface, and the deck walking surface should be a Class A material, but there's an exception to go down to Class B with composite decking material. So your Trex should still be okay. So I don't know if you want me to go into the details of all these. I mean, it's probably too much to.
We're just trying to get a sense.
Yeah.
We're just trying to get a sense of if the builders who are building can, that's why I keep asking Councilmember Peters, can build under these requirements.
And I'll say with eaves and exterior walls, there are, I think, 5 different arrangements that are permissible in this for eaves, and I think 6 different arrangements for exterior walls. So there's a lot of options to choose from. You know, the large diameter wood or log wall construction is still permissible. we're looking for non-combustible exterior walls or exterior walls covered in non-combustible material or 1 hour fire rated walls rated from the exterior. So there's many ways to go about it. So you'd have to take a look. But with all of these requirements, we tried to give a number of options, not just one prescriptive option. So I think one of the things that some people are not happy with is with the exterior walls, we have exterior wall construction requirements, but then covering requirements as well. So you build the wall to be resilient to the fire, but then we don't want you putting something on the wall that's gonna convey fire. And so, the siding has some, they're limited. It's limited to non-combustible siding or
Ignition resistant?
yeah, ignition resistant. I don't have the code in front of me, but there's 3 options for siding if you get into the class 2 requirements. So maybe pay attention to that. But depending on how you construct the wall, you can still use vinyl siding though. So there are two options for exterior wall construction where it would still allow the use of vinyl siding. So, and then under floor enclosures and appendages and projections, what we're trying to do there is just protect those just like we did the exterior walls. So you end up wrapping those however you did the exterior walls. And then windows and doors, these ones, there's several options for both, but really windows, you've got glass block, you've got multi-pane glass, so the double pane glass that we see used in most construction nowadays will meet the requirements. You can do 20-minute rated glass or tempered glass. So there's a lot of options for glass. Doors are limited to non-combustible construction or solid core at least 1 3/4 wood door, or a 20-minute door. So I think there's a lot of options there that you end up meeting. And then detached accessory structures, I won't get into it, but it's really applying to those structures that are closer than 50 feet to the main building. So if you're building those more than 50 feet away, then it doesn't apply like we talked about in most cases. But if you're closer than 50 feet, then there's some requirements for those. So.
If you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
I think most of the lot sizes that we're building on in Trinidad are either the large residential estate lots or there are regular established and redevelopment neighborhood size lots. Would 50 feet from the main structure even be a question? Or are you already in somebody else's space at 50 feet? Residential estate's the only thing I can think of where you're not. Okay, just curious. Okay, thank you.
And so it's a really good point to make. And
Based on zoning, I think
yeah,
we won't have much in the city other than a few neighborhoods that are residential estate, which are 5,000 lots. I think I would have to go back and look at the code. Thank you.
okay. And then like class 1, there's some additional site and area requirements. So again, everything in class 1 applies to class 2, but then we have some additional requirements. So we have, you can see here that there's 2 more zones. There's 5 to 30 feet and then 30 to 100 feet. And there's just some vegetation management requirements for those 2 zones. So once you get into class 2, you're going to start to limit how much vegetation you have in that area. So this is 5 to 30 feet. And you're going to try and spread things out. So you don't want to have an arrangement where you can have a fire go from tree to tree to tree to building. And so you're trying to keep your trees 6 to 10 feet apart. You're gonna trim them up from the ground, because at this point we're trying to get the fire to get back down to the ground, because once it's on the ground and it gets to that 5-foot non-combustible zone, it'll peter out and shouldn't even touch the structure. So we're trying to keep the fire at the ground level at this point. So you're gonna trim up your trees. It's, I think, 6 to 9 feet up. If your tree isn't tall enough to trim up that far, then it's just 1/3 the height of the tree. So it's just kind of spreading those combustibles out. And then the 30 to 100 feet is same thing, spreading the trees out, but there's not that trim up requirement once you get into that zone. Now, this is an area where we're going to enlist the help of the State Forest Service, because I'm an old fire and building guy. I don't understand how to manage trees, but the Forest Service does a very good job of that. So we're going to have access to their expertise. There are some trees where if you spread them out 6 to 10 feet, they're all going to blow over, you're going to kill them. And so we need their expertise to say, okay, that's the type of tree where you want to clump them. And so you would kind of have islands of trees rather than spreading them all out. And then you'd have the islands of trees spread out from one another, where you could, maybe that island of tree will catch fire, but it won't, catch the next island of trees on fire and then the house. So it's all just trying to limit how much exposure the building ends up having. So, any questions on those class 2 requirements? Okay. So just in conclusion, all governing bodies in Colorado with wildland urban interface, so anywhere on the map where you see color, the governing bodies in those areas have to adopt this code by April 1st. As you saw on the map, there are very few areas of Colorado that aren't impacted by this code. I think people have this idea that the wildland urban interface is the cabin in the woods, but really we're seeing more and more buildings impacted by wildland fire on the plains, in the mountains. It affects all of us. So the code has those elements of structure hardening and site and area design requirements. And so it's a combination of those two things that are really going to move the needle here. So with that, do you have any other questions for me?
I have a pretty big question.
Yeah.
What happens if we don't adopt this? On July 1, what happens if we're not adopting it? And the reason I'm asking is we've heard all kinds of things.
Yeah, so let me kind of dispel the rumors. I'll tell you what the actual statute says, and then I'll tell you what we've heard.
Okay, that's fair.
So the statute just says if you don't adopt it, then every year the board has to make a report to the legislature, and that report has to contain the jurisdictions that are in compliance and the jurisdictions that are out of compliance. So if you decide not to adopt, you just go in that list of non-compliant jurisdictions.
Correct.
That's all the statute says.
Okay.
Now, there is speculation that because it's going to the legislature, that's a public document, and that document could be used to make other decisions.
Sure.
But nobody has come out and said that yet. So I'll tell you what I've heard. I've heard that there's potential for other state agencies to use it to make decisions on grants or funding. I have not heard anybody in state agency say that. And I think you'd be hired, the grants that we manage, I don't think my boss, the director of the division, would ever do that to our fire jurisdictions. But that's not to say somebody couldn't get a hold of it and say, you're supposed to adopt this and you haven't, so we aren't going to approve your grant. I think more likely is that the insurance agencies could get a hold of that and say, okay, you have this statewide code you're supposed to be applying and you aren't. We aren't going to insure the new buildings in your jurisdiction, right? The other one is, one of the chiefs up north in one of the rural areas, he had a mortgage company tell him that they won't underwrite any mortgages that are supposed to be under this code that aren't. So that's the three big ones I've heard. I don't know if there's any validity to it, but I think that's one where you gotta get with your council and decide, weigh the impacts and the potential ramifications.
The only other one that I had heard was if we had a major fire incident, that obviously the state's gonna come help us.
Yeah.
Fire prevention and control has the whole section, that does come down and help assist in fighting fires, but that after that was done, we might be handed the bill for that. Whereas state resources have paid for those things in the past.
And I
Once again, we're just hearing different things.
And I won't say that could never happen, but I just don't see us doing that.
Okay.
But that's under our current leadership.
Right.
We're gonna get a new governor at the end of the year, and my boss could change, and it could change to somebody who has different philosophies, so.
Right.
We
have to entertain the
possibilities.
Right?
Yeah. And I guess to that point, another one I had heard was you have a catastrophic fire come through, and the insurance agency, maybe they had insured buildings, but they might come through and they'll look for any reason not to pay out the insurance.
Right.
And say,
Right.
yeah, you paid for your insurance all along, but we aren't gonna pay out your claim because you didn't build the standards that should have been adopted, so.
Hey, Chief, I got one question. Thank you for that question,
Sure.
because we're all confused over this.
Yes.
We adopt this. This is standalone. There's no mandates tagged on for any other code issues. This is standalone.
Really good question, yes. So I can't remember the bill number last year. I think it was House Bill 25-1243 maybe. I'll have to find it. But that bill established that, I think what you're probably thinking of is that there's the energy efficiency code and the carbon neutral code that you have to adopt if you adopt a new building code.
That is the question I'm asking.
That bill specifically exempted this code from kicking in those requirements. So adopting this code will not kick in the requirement to adopt the energy code or the solar ready and electric ready code.
Perfect, thank you.
I have a quick question. I think it's quick. Is there any provisions, let's just say we adopt this as it is, and someone living in the red zone never does anything to trigger that, so their house isn't ever subject to it, and then a fire happens, is there any provisions that would protect them from not being covered by insurance? I mean, because that's the easy next step, right?
Yeah, now you're getting into something that I don't really understand.
I understand, but I mean, it's a logical next step if all the other things are.
Yeah, true. I mean, I could see, the insurance agencies are looking to make their profit, right? And so if they see a house that it doesn't fit into that profit scheme, then they might still pull the insurance. So that's the thing, is this only really takes care of, this is a future-looking mitigation, right? Like, it's gonna take many years of building under this to get us to a place where we've replaced all the legacy homes that don't have these requirements. And so I think we're talking 30 years before we get to the point where the majority of our housing stock is resilient. And so I think that we need to also look at what can we do with our existing homes, and that's where I think right now there's a bill that is suggesting providing money to the home hardening grant program, which is meant for existing buildings where people are incentivized to harden their homes, and it's those types of grants that will make that possible, I think.
Chief Burnett, to that, question. Do you have jurisdictions that are, to Councilmember Williamson's question, that would do like a public campaign to say to residential homeowners, take these steps? Okay, sorry, okay, we were gonna talk about it, thank you. Okay. And are you gonna talk about the difference in this and the ICC?
Yeah.
Okay, then those are, all my questions are answered.
Okay, and to that point, I kept saying that you had to adopt this code. The statute says you have to adopt this or something equivalent, and so I think Chief Beckrith is going to talk to you about your options.
So can I just ask that question then? So you said there was a carve out that specifically exempted you from having to go to the other building code, the EV, whatever. In this bill, correct? So if we adopt the other code, or the other thing that we're gonna talk about, then that is not in there because we're not adopting this?
Chief Backrack's gonna cover that question.
Okay.
Are you, or?
I can't cover that specific.
Okay.
I'm gonna need to look up what exactly that bill said that became statute, because I don't know if it specifically said this resiliency code or a code
Equal to.
So let me look it up for you and then.
I'm just trying to figure out.
No,
whichever
that's a
we
really
adopt,
good question.
does it trigger or doesn't it
Yeah,
trigger this other building code?
While Chief is talking, I'll try and find an answer to that, because I hadn't been asked that before, but that's a really good question. Because I don't want to steer you one way and then you end up having to adopt 2 more codes because.
We think we know the answer based on our research from the other day, but I'd appreciate that being confirmed.
Okay, let me look too, and,
Thank you.
and you might want to too.
Happy to try.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you.
Well, thanks for hearing me out today. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Oh, we will-
I
we will
I
be in
actually
touch.
like this code because it seems like it's working. It's working with the communities. It's not, just a hard line rule. I mean, you can talk to people and you can figure out, it gives people options, so.
Good.
I actually like this code.
Oh, thank you.
You guys might want to record that.
I was-
That's the first time you're ever. But this is common sense to me.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And I'll be here for more questions. And I'll try
I'll
to
be
get
here all
that.
next year.
Yeah, you record that.
Councilman Williamson, did you have a question?
All right. So he had the longest presentation, that's why I put him on first. Just a couple things. When we adopt a code, we need to adopt that map. Because we don't have the resources or the intelligence to build our own map or the money. There is a lot of data points in that map that we're not able to do. So we will adopt that map as the second part of the code adoption. Okay? Your question, so resiliency code or wildland urban interface code versus community wildfire protection plan that you and I had talked about. 2 separate things, okay? This code that we're trying to get adopted is for new construction or additions or remodels or whatever. Community wildfire protection plan that the county is putting together, I sit on that board as well. That'll be done in September. That is for existing homeowners, and we're trying to put your names in there if you have a lot of fuel packages. And so you'll be able to apply for mitigation grants through that on the personal side. So we're trying to kind of combat this 2 ways, right? New construction and people that already have existing property in the city and the county with that plan. Does that make sense now?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 separate things, okay? As far as the resiliency code, the only reason I'm on that board is because there was a part in it that I didn't agree with, imagine that. And Dave's pretty vocal. And it was part of any local governing body that has wildland urban interface in their districts need to adopt this code. And so what that did in Los Angeles County, and that's who I was stepping up for, is our fire protection districts in our county do not adopt codes. They don't enforce codes. They don't issue building permits. They don't issue certificate of occupancy. So I talked to the code board and they said, well, you need to talk to your legislators. So I did that and our great legislator said, well, okay, go sit on the code board. And so they appointed me. So that's how I got there. And we were able to work that problem out. They're coming out with an attestation form now that our local fire districts in our county and across the state, because I speak for rural Colorado, that's my position on that board. As long as there's overlapping coverage, they can sign this attestation form stating there's overlapping coverage, and they would submit it with the county ordinance or whatever they pass to the state, so they're not on the naughty list that he was talking about. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we took care of that. Now in your package, I'm trying to give you as many options as I can, especially after the meeting we had last week that talked about, well, if I adopt this code, then it's going to trigger that code, right? So initially I gave you the 2024 International Wildland Urban Interface Code. We were going to have a meeting on it. We were going to have a work session. Chief was going to come down then. But the board kind of threw me a monkey wrench and about who was approving these different codes. And so we kind of worked through that process. I sent up our code to the state to get reviewed. As of today, I finally got an email today saying that code that's in your package has been approved by the state, doesn't require any further review, okay? And then I put in your packet, I think Audra did on Friday, Thursday, Friday, the actual wildfire resiliency code. So you kind of have two options on which way you want to go on the code. The map is not an option. We have to adopt that map, okay? Does that explain everything to you? You guys got any question? I know it's a lot of information. Trust me, I've been working on this thing for months.
What we think is if we adopt the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, that does not trigger building codes. What we think is if we adopt the Wildland Urban Interface, is that the best name?
Right.
Even with our amendments in it.
The WUI code, we call it the WUI code.
The International WUI code, that would.
So, let me add one more thing, and Nick Mason did a good job here. Because the county, I'm working with the county to kind of go hand in hand with us. It doesn't look like we're gonna go hand in hand, but we kind of like local control down here more than the state telling us what to do. And so Nick gave some rationale. It's clarity and enforceability, and we're talking about the International Wildland Urban Interface Code of 2024. So clarity and enforceability, integration with the existing codes, because we already use the International Building Code, we already use the International Fire Code. This would just be an add-on. Everybody, our planning department already knows these codes. Targeting local applications, so the code allows the city to designate specific WUI areas, but we're using our map, so the map's gonna take care of those WUI areas for us, right? Predictability for development, prescriptive standards provide greater certainty for property owners and builders, supporting efficient development review and helping control construction, and then greater local control and jurisdictional authority. The WUI code preserves greater local control for the city compared to the state wildfire resilience code. While the wildfire resilience code establishes a broad statewide framework, the WUI code allows the city to directly adopt, amend, and administer specific standards based on local conditions, priorities, and risk tolerance. And sitting on this board, this is the first code that the state has ever adopted. And so there's going to be changes being pushed annually or every 3 years. I think we evaluate every 3 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so every 3 years, the board's going to come together and say, well, we need to make this change, or we need to make that change. It's not saying we shouldn't be reviewing our codes every 3 years ourselves, but if it gets pushed down from the state, you're going to have to amend your code with that new one. So you're going to have to balance local control versus triggering another code, right?
So we're gonna wait and see. Staff was strongly recommending the Wildland Urban Interface Code because it gave more local control. And we felt like we amended it to fit what
It meets the state's wildland resilience
standards.
code.
It doesn't go one step further.
And it doesn't trigger any.
It does.
We don't
It
know,
does.
right?
We think it will. We're waiting. We feel like it will. We're waiting for confirmation.
And
So-
we were on track to adopt this by April 1st, but when the state threw that in on the board, I said.
We just pulled it.
we pulled it. But as long as we have something in the works by July 1st, I think we'll be on the good list, not the naughty list, so maybe we'll get a Christmas present from the state.
We do
So
have
the
to,
resiliency code puts us on the good list.
Right.
In this
Either one does.
Right.
We just have.
But we need to answer the question if that mandates us to
Correct.
adopt something else and opens a can of worms.
and then you're going to need to make a decision on the building code, and that as a separate conversation. However, if you decide, and that is another state mandate and a good and bad list, if you decide to update the building code, not saying you would, we haven't even finished that discussion yet. But if you decide to do that, we may recommend the Wildland Urban Interface Code, which meets the exact standards Chief Burnett talked about. But it allows us to have more local control, and Chief Backrack heard back this morning that the amendments we proposed were accepted. So we could go that way. Or, depending on the building code discussion, we could go with the Wildland Resiliency Code. We will have a definitive answer on what triggers and what does not trigger for sure.
What is our time frame on these?
We have to, Audrey and I did that this morning. We have to do a first reading no later than the second meeting in May. And she's getting the date for us now.
A first reading of what?
An ordinance
Of adopting something.
to adopt
About the
this
resiliency?
and the building
Okay.
code. We're
And the
talking
building
about
code by July?
by the first, by May 19th.
May.
To get it
May
done by
19th.
June 30th.
First reading to do second reading on June 16th.
No later than.
No later than May 19th. The decision has to be made.
Still coming up pretty quick.
Yeah.
It is coming up very quick. We pulled this from your agendas to adopt by April 1, partially so you could attend meetings like we had last week.
You know, that was a very good meeting last week. We had planning and zoning there. Most everybody concerned in the community was there.
We have,
And we asked good questions.
we have
a lot of
5
people-
follow-ups, but we just want to come back to Chief Backrack and I want to come back to the fact that what we do in that world may answer the question of what we do here in terms of A or B.
Okay. Will we have the opportunity to get independent legal opinion on these issues?
Well, CML's got the city attorneys looking at it, so we'll dial into that.
Okay.
Yeah,
And when somebody said CIRSA attorneys, are they specific experts on this?
No.
Who are the experts that we can talk to?
We're all learning together, I would
Okay.
say. Do you want to
Because-
speak to that?
Yeah,
To me, this is a huge decision that's gonna affect everybody in the community, that I just wanna have proper legal representation and be able to ask questions of what other communities are doing versus, I wanna have as much information as I can if possible.
I don't know of law firms or lawyers that have a proficiency in building code issues. I mean, I really don't. It's a pretty unique area. We could try to find somebody, but I think most attorneys are going to advise you to, err towards lawful compliance and doing what needs to be done. But to answer your question, I don't know of any.
Part of
Maybe
the-
we can work on that from now and then.
We can work
Please.
on it, but one of, just in response, and Chief Burnett said it just a second ago, the state hasn't clearly stated what the implications will be if you don't follow it. So every attorney in the sphere is gonna be in the exact same position that Les is in. The state says you must do this. There's no, if you don't do this, these things will happen. So I'm not an attorney, but I imagine you're gonna hesitate to get one that's going to advise you to go against state law. But we can ask around.
I mean, there was so much confusion on the different House bills and Senate bills and executive orders thrown in, that it's getting pretty complicated. Even though I've studied it the best that I can, I'm still a little confused.
So the young lady that was giving our presentation.
Shauna,
Donna?
Shauna.
She is like the most knowledgeable person I've ever met with codes, and she helped us write or put this together for the state, for the international code. They got accepted.
from the state. It's not a legal opinion, but she kind of knows the codes.
No, she was fabulous with codes, but we were still throwing questions at her that she couldn't answer.
And she could probably follow up on.
She probably could.
She's in touch with us and we are following up on various things. We left with 5 questions we've answered
I
to.
want good legal information before I vote on this, because it's kind of complicated.
We'll give you the best that's out there. I'm just cautioning you that
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
I'm saying yes.
Well, further compounding it too is some people are citing, state statutes that didn't even make it out of, committee.
Right, and I've heard that, that's part of the confusion. There's,
Well, it's just a citizen.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah, if it's never made it to a bill, it doesn't exist. I just think we need to just really consider the uniqueness of our area too, because we've got a lot of properties that aren't under standard planning and they're not scoped out right. There's a lot of 30 by 30 lots out there that are gonna be in that red zone, that how are you gonna put fence lines? How are you gonna, which came to from your question before.
Right.
So we're gonna have to figure some unique way to, wherever we can adapt, because it's not gonna help them out. Because how do we modify it if it's locked in on the other code? You know, because if it's locked in there and say, no, you stand, you have to have that 30 feet from your home, and it's like, well, now I have a barren property with no windbreaks, you know? or I'm in my neighbor's yard cutting down their trees.
no,
Yeah, so
I'm
it's
with
just,
you, man.
yeah, there's some weird stuff that we have here unique to this area versus going up north where they actually platted out correctly. You know, here they gave away land or they sold land and they built a house on that, so we still have all those old homesteads out there in different ways. So it's gonna be unique.
In my research of this over the last year or so, if you build your home to these codes or your building to these codes, you have like a 40 to 60% better survivability rate in a wildland fire. So that's a plus, right? What you're talking about your neighbors, and I have this problem with the reserve at Fisher Peak now. I'm working with that HOA to do some mitigation work up there. If you have your neighbor that's not doing any mitigation, and you do mitigation, or we build a brand new house that meets these codes, and your neighbor's not doing that, your fire department, we're gonna respond with 4 to 5 people initially on a wildland fire, and we're gonna triage your home like we triage patients, right? We're gonna do the greatest good for the greatest number of homes. Same with medical, greatest number of good for the patients, right? And so if you are not doing any work, or your neighbor's not doing any work, we're gonna bypass that house and move on to the guy that's been doing work to try and save that house. I mean, we have to, we don't have 100 firefighters here, right? So these codes are good. They'll benefit us, you just need to choose which one and how we go about it.
Now, the other question that I had that I was pondering on, so with enforcement, so will it,
Well, that was the third thing. So we can take care of all the enforcement in-house. We don't need help from the FTC on that front. We already do plan review. We issue the building permit. We issue the certificate of occupancy. They'll have to meet this code before they get their CO anyway. And then we'll do some education. I've already been talking with Nick's group on when the house is done, we will educate the homeowner on what their responsibility is to keep their property up. And then again, if they don't, shame on them, right? I'm not gonna like go start cutting trees on private property, ain't gonna happen, right?
But we could go as far as this program with the grants comes through.
Right.
For existing, we could go as far as having neighborhood meetings.
Correct.
And trying to help neighborhoods collectively figure out how to make their areas more fire resistant. Then if we implement a mitigation program in the public space, we may, over a decade, really impact our ability to withstand a major fire.
Right now, this town, do you guys remember Waldo Canyon fire? Do you remember the Black Forest fire? We are like primed right now. So if we get a wildland fire that comes off any of these hills and the wind's pushing 60, 70 miles an hour, we're not gonna get in its way, right? We're gonna clean up after it goes through.
Yeah,
But we haven't had moisture, significant moisture since September, so.
We've had 3 house fires in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Can I just ask an unrelated kind of question, because I can't call you and ask you like last night? How'd you guys do on those fires?
My dad's rocked it.
Yeah.
Well, we've had 4 rescues in 2 weeks and, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause that was a tough day. That was the hottest day of the year.
Yeah, that was,
Hopefully the wind was
Yeah,
down.
you should be very proud of your fire
yeah,
department.
no, they did a fabulous job. I do have to ask though, because what was the cause of those fires?
It was all accidental.
Was it? Yeah.
None of it was arson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But like accidental, like was that electricity? Was that somebody cooking? Like, I just.
We've left the scope of
We
Oh,
have,
yeah, sorry.
we're venturing
Yep, okay,
probably
go on.
into
Okay.
a core request type of
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
But thank you guys.
Okay, thank you guys, and thank you to our staff.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so we have a lot more to learn about these things at the next work session. We'll be back to building code. We have some other things that are coming up. But it sounds like to answer the question of which way you want to go here, and we'll need to come back to this, we're going to need to get a little further into the building code discussion and the carbon neutral versus electric ready. Because if we don't do one, it triggers the other, so, yeah.
Good night.
It's, Glenn Walter's comment was pressing.
Yeah, he was
the best.
Yeah,
He was right.
yeah. So, do you feel like you have at least a beginning working knowledge of this?
Yeah.
Then over time, what we'd appreciate, what staff would need from you is questions that come up in your mind about this code as we're learning about the others, so that we can follow up with Chief Burnett and we can continue to learn about building codes and learn about the fire resiliency codes together. And then the goal is we've got 2 work sessions left. And then that 3rd work session, the first one in May, we've got to have a decision. So we can bring ordinances forward by that May date. Okay, so this is the work for now. We're gonna start putting some other things in. I've got another couple of requests I'll go over for different things unrelated to this at the next work session. But for now, this is it.
Thank you so much for all the information today. It was really, really great. Thank you so much, everybody. And that will call our meeting to order at 4:42.
To adjournment.